to Journey of an Author with Alfred Muller. It has been a hot minute since we've had a video. With the holidays and my job, it's just been really hard to write, do all that, plus the family things, and then get on here and record. So I'm here today, and I would like to talk about building a scene. Before I do that, I would like to point out that I am an independent author, so the only way I get paid for my work is if you guys go out there and help support me. I am on Instagram, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, I'm on TikTok, and Amazon, so I'll put those links in the description. Uh, but feel free, go ahead, check me out. I have a couple of short stories if you want to just start dabbling into my work. And if you like that, feel free to try out my full length novel, The Water Crystal Rise of Azrisol Kaimana. That being said, let's get into scene. Now, what is a scene? A scene is the the zoomed in version of writing. So you have summary, which is if anybody went to high school, you know, listen, summarize this book for me. You basically tell them the basics. This person did this person did that. We had a big epic battle, and then that was it. What a scene does is it takes that and then builds it down to a very small, microscopic view of moments. So you can see the color of a person's eyes, the way they're dressed, the expressions on their face, that dialogue that they say. Um, and then from there, you build additional moments. You have someone else speaking to them. You have people enter the room. Action occurs. Fight scenes. These are a lot of the times what you'll find in scenes. Um, the swing of a sword, things like that. So it seems basic and simple, but what does that mean? Well, when you're writing a scene, you have a few options at your disposal. You're not just giving description, although that is part of it. You're not just giving dialogue, which is a whole nother topic, which I'll do a different video on, the purpose of dialogue and stuff like that. But there are venues that you can take, avenues that you can take to build upon your overall story. So, what do I mean by that? When you're building a scene, you can incorporate foreshadowing, which, for those who aren't aware, it's basically breadcrumbs to a future event. Uh, and in a scene, you can do that for the chapter you're working on, or you can do it for the series if you have a multiple book series planned out, or you can do it for, and most commonly, the book you're working on. And what that looks like is you build up, let's use a mystery, for example. So in the mystery, you are talking to an individual, and the suspect is not the highest on uh, the suspect pool, but the character in the mystery novel is looking into that person and wants to find out some more information. Well, they mention that they went to a cabin. Uh, as a summer camp just because you asked them where were you at the time of the murder. Well, I was at a summer camp. Now maybe that summer camp is or isn't related to where the victim was found. But what you could do is then find that somebody else went to that summer camp later on in the story. And now because in that dialogue scene you've you've added that as a setting, a place within the story. Now, when it's brought up later in the story, you have a foundation for it. Oh, yeah, that's what that character said. Oh, this place. All right, we're going to get to go see it. It builds up and connects the story through events. Other examples could be in a fantasy novel. You're talking, and maybe a character is a villain, and they've butted heads, like the town bully has butted heads with you, the main character. And at that point in the story where the bully beats him up, you know it's a trope. He's eventually going to get his comeuppance, and most likely at the hands of the main character. But perhaps he gets beat up and he gets in jail or something if you're older characters. And then later, he comes back, but he's stronger, he's more dangerous. And now in that beat up scene where your main character's gotten his butt whooped by the villain, the antagonist, the bully, now you've built backstory for that character, and he's now been arrested. He goes to prison. He gets stronger. He gets meaner. And now when he comes back, you now have an issue facing the character where they now have to beat a bigger and stronger bully than when they first faced him. So had they stood up to the bully at that point and stopped him, perhaps that bully wouldn't have gone to jail and gotten stronger and now is a more viable threat. Uh, that's kind of like for a book itself. Uh, for a scene or for a chapter you're working on, it's as simple as you have a young adult novel and the kids are traveling, have traveled and visit their grandparents, and they're stumbling around a library, and they notice that one of the books just it's like sticking out of the bookshelf. It doesn't fit properly within all of the other books stacked in there. So they go over and they pull it out and they read through it and it's nothing and they put it back, but they leave the room before the bookshelf opens. So instead of pulling out the book in the bookshelf opening, it's when you put it back that the bookshelf opens in this made up scenario. So they leave before the bookshelf opens, and if it's like a third person, you could show the bookshelf opening, and you're like, they're gonna have to go in there at some point. So it's little things like that that you can build within a scene that you don't necessarily get in a summary. Because in a summary, you're just trying to get a bunch of information to set up a scene. Scenes are also great for those epic moments in a story. There's very few memorable moments that we all have when we read that take place in summary. There may be some great summaries of long battles and fabulous works. Uh, One example would actually be The Silmarillion by Tolkien. It's basically a history text, and there's very few scenes in it. But what it is, it's a history text of summary. It's just basically this happened at this point. These events occurred now. This is this, and it's done beautifully. But there's not many memorable moments even in that. It's just a well written history text. So when you're writing a scene, that's what you're going for. You're going for those memorable moments, those sad moments, the well, I guess spoilers because this is the most memorable one I could think of. So if you haven't read the Stormlight Archives, I apologize. You should go ahead and do that. This is going to be a spoiler for book three, Rhythm of War. Book three? I apologize. It may be book four. Anyway, Dalinar, one of the main characters, is facing off with the big bad, and he tells him, "You cannot have my pain. My pain is my own." Essentially, now I'm summarizing the scene, but in that moment, you feel the pain and the anguish that this character is accepting the horrible things that they've done and shouldering that burden himself. And that's something you can't really get in a summary. For example, what I just told you, you may not get the emotion that I went through when I read it. Uh, I can portray as much emotion in my statement as I can, but you, as the viewer or as the reader, won't get the same feelings in a summary that you would in a scene. So that's what you're going for when you're writing a scene. You're looking for that heartfelt moment, or the happy or sad or painful, a horror. You're looking for the scary moment. You can't really get scared in a summary necessarily. You can be grossed out and set up for fear, but you don't actually have those fearful emotions when it's a summary. Oh, the scary clown jumped out. Okay, as opposed to I entered the room. It was quiet. I flicked the light on, it didn't turn. A rat ran out from under the bed and drew my attention. That kind of stuff. And then by the time you sit down on the bed, you see the clown rise up behind you. Those are scenes, those are gripping, those are encapsulating. They make you sit there and read the next page. Uh, so when you're writing a scene, that's what you can look for. You want to look for dialogue, you want to look for setup, and you want to look for potential to set up future moments, foreshadows future moments in the story. You also get description. Now, description is important because it distinguishes who the characters are. And in a scene, it's great to get those, even though the description may be summarized. Really good authors can describe in action, which is even better, and also scene within a scene, or read within a scene. So don't just summarize, and when you're building a scene, make sure that you don't just describe, because you're looking for certain elements in it. Like I said, dialogue and so on. Also, scenes have choices. Choices are the backbone of your characters. You don't have to, you want to make sure that your characters are choosing some to some extent of the story. But also don't be crippled by the fact that your characters make choices because let's be honest, some characters would choose to sit and do nothing. Your job as the author is to force them into doing stuff. So, for example, in one of the scenes I'm writing, I have a character who is standing outside of a courthouse and looking inside, and they can see a shadowy figure. Now, they're looking for a particular individual, and this shadowy figure doesn't necessarily match the appearance. But I could summarize this, and it would come out quick and easy, but the scene really builds up the indecision in the character. Do they break into a courthouse and expose themselves to mundane law, or do they sit back and wait for this person to come out? And if they are a demon or a supernatural entity, are they even going to come out of the courthouse? How did they break in? Is it worth my time to sit here? Especially because the individual I'm looking for doesn't seem to be here. Now, in if it were up to my characters, they would leave. They would walk away and go and look for something else. But one of the characters is kind of an X factor, uh, so they kind of just go off and they're like, "Oh, I'll look." So while that one goes off and starts looking, the other two are still talking about whether they should break in or not. And at that point, the shadowy figure disappears and exits out the rear of this courthouse. Why is that different from forcing my characters into a situation or taking away their choice? Well, what I've done is I've played up the indecision of the one character. Uh, I've also incorporated a character that has unpredictability. It makes sense for that character to do as I said because that is that character. And it also is a little bit of my author plot twisting where the shadowy figure leaves at that point. Now I have reasons for why that character does that, and that helps build up the story for that character. But it is a little of a hand wavy, I did this because I'm the author kind of thing. However, if you can make a scene work and it still feels real, that's the important part. So choices are what you see in a scene. You want not only the main character to have choices, but you got to realize if you incorporate other characters in that scene, they all have choices as well. So don't just shoehorn your characters into what you want. Like I could have had them all barge into the courthouse and have a big fight, but that wouldn't have been realistic. That wouldn't have been what the characters wanted to do in any situation. Even the unpredictable character had limits to that. So when you're building a scene, you have so many details you have to focus on, and it's not necessarily that you have to do all of these in a given scene. You could have an internal monologue, but just know that it's more than description and it's more than summary when you get down into a scene. You have these moments, so choose them carefully because it's not necessarily that every moment of all of our lives or even the lives of your character are as important as the specific scenes we as authors choose to show the reader to build the story. So that's my take on scenes. I do hope you enjoyed this video. Like I said, I'll have links in the description for where you can follow me on social media, as well as my written works. And I'd love to have a discussion in the comments. For my author friends out there, what are some of your tips for writing a scene or for summary? This is kind of loosely a show versus tell story video, but I didn't get into the details of that. Basically, I just wanted to get the basics down of how to write a scene. Please also, if you disagree with me, by all means, I'd love having conversations about it. I think it's the only way we grow the art of writing. So until next time, guys, have a good one.